Hello friends, welcome again to my channel. My name is Michael Tobechuku, and in today's project we'll be creating an age checker application, as you can see right on the screen. It's a simple but interesting project that is perfect for you even if you are a beginner. So we'll be using HTML, CSS and a little bit of JavaScript to accomplish this project. We'll use the HTML to create the structure of the project. Then we use CSS to add some styling to make it look really nice. And then we use JavaScript to bring our project to life, to make it actually perform what we want it to. So I'm going to run a quick test of this application so you see what it does. So it says in the box here, enter your age. And of course, before it, you see it says, how old are you? So I'm going to type the age of 15, for example. Then I click on this button. It says you are 15 years old. Welcome. You are old enough to play. So I'm going to try a smaller number, say 9. So it says you are 9 years old. Sorry, you are not old enough to play this game. So I'm going to try 10 and see. So it says you are 10 years old. Welcome, you are old enough to play. So that shows you that for this application, the age limit is what? 10. Now, while you're creating yours, you can set the age limit to be any number you want. Now, don't forget to like this video. At this very point now, you should like this video and share it with your friends as well. And if you are yet to subscribe to this channel for more coding tutorials. So, are you ready to get into it? So the first thing I'll do, of course, is to create a folder in any directory on my computer that I choose. Could be on the desktop, could be in a document. And after you've done that, you open your code editor. So the code editor I'll be using is Visual Studio Code, or VS Code for short, because it gives us a lot of really nice features to write some coding languages. Okay, so I'll be using that. And of course, I've opened my folder already using the VS Code. So as you can see on the left side of my screen, I have my folder open already. So make sure you open your folder before you begin anything. So the first thing we'll do is to create 3 files. Okay, we'll create the files for the HTML, for the CSS and for the JavaScript. That way we can write the different languages in the different files. Okay, so to do that, just come here to where you have the folder name. The first icon here says new file, so click on it. First one is index.html and you press enter. Then do that again for styles.css, press enter. Then the third one is your JavaScript file, so that's script.js. Now you can name your files anything you want, but you must make sure you have the file extension .html, .css and .js. So each of them represent the different languages that we'll be writing there. Okay, so the first thing, of course, we start with our HTML to create the structure of our web page. One of the reasons I wanted us to use VS Code is that it gives us some nice features, like I said, including some really awesome shortcuts, okay, where we don't have to start typing everything from scratch. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is to create the basic structure of our HTML document, of our HTML page, and we're using a shortcut that VS Code allows us to create that. So on your keyboard, hold down the shift key and press 1. Okay, then it gives you this exclamation mark, of course, and then you just select it and it gives you this, the basic structure of your HTML page, including your doc type HTML, the opening tag of HTML right here, closing tag of HTML, the head, the body, as you can see, and then title, and then some meta tags right here. All right, first thing we'll do again now is to change the title of our page. Okay, we're creating age checker app. So instead of documents, we change it to age checker app by, you then put your name. Okay, that's a cool way to identify you, the creator. All right, now the next thing we'll do is we want to link this HTML file with this CSS, so that later on when we add our CSS, we will be able to apply to this index.html page. So to do that, another cool shortcut that VS Code allows us, just type link on your keyboard, then :CSS. Okay, you can see it gives us that abbreviation. So I just select it using my keyboard and it gives me this. Now take note, you must make sure that the name of the CSS file here matches exactly the CSS file that you created. So what I have to do is change this. Instead of style.css, I have to make it styles.css. input.css. So that way I ensure that this style file I created and this is exactly the same. Okay, with that we can get started. Okay, let's look at the finished project. So that will guide us in writing our HTML code. So here you have the finished project. So the first thing you see, of course, is a box, and inside that box we have some text, and then we have this little box right here where we can type. It's an input box, and then we have the button. So we're going to quickly write this one. For this we'll be using h1, and for this we'll be using a simple paragraph tag. So let's go. But interesting thing is we want to ensure that we put everything inside this box. So for that, I'll create what is known as a div. A div is just a simple container, okay? Just a simple container that we can add a lot of content inside. So the first thing, of course, is this title, a checker app, and then we have this, which is a paragraph. So I have my h1, so I'll call it what? Age checker app. Right, cool. And then I have my paragraph tag. What is the text? Can you see the text? How old are you? All right, there you go. Let us open this page in our browser and see what we have so far. So here we are. I've opened the page that we are creating using a browser, and this is what we have right now. See, we have been able to do this and this. But of course, as you can see, it's aligned to the left side of the page, unlike this, which is aligned to the center. That is where CSS comes in much later on. Okay, now the next two things we'll do is this input box is input because it allows us to type numbers. Okay, so it's an input box, and then this button. Let's quickly create that. All right, so we use the input and you hit enter. Now the input type is what automatically gives you what? Text. But then age, of course, is a number, so we do not want what? Text. So instead of text, I will change this to number. Okay, so the input type that we want the user of our application to type in that box is a what? Is a number. All right, now so if you look at this box right here, this input box, you see there's something inside, but once I type a number, you no longer see it. It is called a placeholder. Right there you go, it's called a placeholder. And what is the text of the placeholder? Enter your age. So that placeholder is just a kind of temporary text that is just there until the user types something in the box. Okay, now the next thing you see, of course, is a button. So I hit enter, I go to the next line and I type button, and then the text of the button is check eligibility. All right, as you can see right here. Okay, so that is, so in between the opening tag of the button and the closing tag of the button is where you put the text that you want to appear in the page. Okay, now let's refresh our page and see what we have. Ta-da! See here we are. So with that, we have come to the end of the HTML part of our project. The next thing now is for us to style it using CSS to make it look as close to this as possible. Are you ready? Welcome again, friends, to the part 2 of this tutorial on creating this age checker application. Okay, now we'll be going into the CSS. In the previous video, I guided you through how to write the HTML of this project. All right, so back to our project. Now, for us to be able to write the CSS effectively, we need to add some HTML attributes. Okay, we need to add some HTML attributes to these different elements we have on our page. So we'll be starting with this container. Remember, I told you this div is just a simple container that can wrap a bunch of text and elements in your HTML. So we'll be adding the attribute called a class. Okay, class is an attribute that makes it very easy for you to style your web page. So I'm going to name my class container. You can give it any name you want, but whatever name you give it, take note of it. Let's move on to the next element here, which is the h1. I'm going to add another class, and then I'll call it page title. All right, now take note and ensure that your class name does not have what? Space in between. Must be one word. Okay, so you can use underscore, or you can use what is known as the camel case. Okay, where you have the capital letter in between. Now I'm also going to add a class to this paragraph, and then I'll call it maybe age or something. age entry, where something like that. Okay, you can give it any name, like I said, but whatever name it is you call it, you have to take note of that name. Then let's add another different attribute this time to this input. Okay, there are different HTML attributes, so I've successfully used one attribute named class. Now I'm going to use another one called ID, and then I'll call this age inputs. All right, I'll call this ID what? Age input. And for this button as well, I'll add another ID called check button. Right, now take note of something. You see that I'm adding the attributes, the HTML attributes, to the opening tags. Look at this div. This is the opening tag. So you see I added the attribute of class as part of the opening tag. Same thing with this h1 is part of the what? Opening tag. Same thing with this paragraph, part of the what? Opening tag, not after the opening tag. No, so take note of that. Now for this input, now because this input does not have a closing tag, okay, that is why the ID, which is the attribute I'm adding for this, is right here. Okay, you can see it has no what? Closing tag. It's one of the few tags in HTML that do not have closing tag, just like the link tag. You see that? No what? Closing tag. Now if you come back to this button, I added the ID attribute as part of the what? Opening tag. Very good. That will make it easy for us to style our web page. All right, now I've come to my CSS file. Don't forget earlier that I had linked my HTML to the CSS using this line of code. Now let's come here. So the first thing we want to do is to select this div, which I have named what? A container. So let's come here. Now I added an HTML attribute named class, which I named what? Container. Okay, so the name in between the quotation marks is the name of the attribute. Okay, just as this ID, what is the name of this ID? Age input. What is the name of this ID? Check button. Good. When you want to style a class in CSS, you use dots and the name of that class. Okay, you add dot and the name of that class. So the first thing we are styling is this div, okay, which covers the entire content. So the name is what? Container. And then when I come to my CSS, I do what? Dot the name of that class. Then I add my curly brackets. Okay, very good. Now look at the finished work. Tell me, what's the first thing you think we should do to get this our project, which is currently like this, to make it looking like this? A couple of things. Number one, we need this box, right, with the lines round about it. This is where the div comes in, right? And then we also need it to be centralized, and then also we need this button to what? Be what? This color. You can use any color you want to. So let's come back to our own project. This is what it looks like now. So the first thing is to align it to the center. So we use the CSS property called what? Text align, and then we use the value of center. Then another thing is to add the border. Okay, the border is the lines around about it. Okay, so I'm going to add the three different properties that border has. So there's border color, so I'm going to use black. Then there's border width. I'm just going to use 2 pixels. Then I'm going to use border style. Border style has to do with what kind of border do you want. So I'm just going to use solid. Now when I go to our page and I refresh, you see that now our web page is in the center, and it has a what? A border round about it. Let me explain what I just did. Number one, text align center. That's what brought it to the center. Border color, that's the color of these lines round about. That's what we call the border. Then the border width has to do with the thickness of this line. If I increase it to 20, for example, and I refresh, you see that it becomes thicker, right? So I'm going to take it back to 2 and refresh, and it's what? Thin. So border style has to do what kind of border, what kind of lines do you want? We have dashed. If I use dashed, you see what it looks like. If I refresh that, you see the difference. And then of course there are others, but I don't want anything fancy, so I'm just going to use what? Solid. All right, that's for the border. Now if you take note of this box that has the line, you see that it's quite wide compared to this finished work. Now, what do? We do what is known as width. Width, of course, you know how wide it is. I'm going to set my width to maybe 300 pixels. Let's see what that looks like. See, it's quite small, so I'm just going to increase it to maybe 400. All right, good. It's much wider now, but is it as wide as this? And we can still make do with this. That's fine. But then you see that it aligns to what? To the left. The next thing we need to do is bring the entire thing back to the center. So to make our content come to the center, we use a property known as margin, and we use the value of auto. That way it will measure it and bring it back to the center, as you can see. Now, one final thing you'll notice, or say two more things. You notice that there's more space inside this box, and this content is not touching the lines here. Unlike this, is touching the line. So we need to add that space, and also we need to change the color of this button. So let's quickly do that. So that's where we now need what is known as what? Padding. So padding adds space inside the box, while margin adds space outside the box. Okay, so let's say we want a padding of 30 pixels. It's going to add that much space. So you can use your discretion to determine how much padding it needs. Okay, still looks a little small. I think I'm going to increase it to maybe 40 pixels and refresh. All right, this looks okay for me. I'm cool with this. So the final thing we need to do is to get this button to change the color. All right, now let's come back to the HTML. Look at the button right here. Am I right? Oh yes, definitely. And it has an attribute of ID, and the ID is named what? Check button. Now, did you note earlier when I selected the class of this container, I use a dot, the name of the class. But when it comes to ID, you use hash and then the name of the ID, and of course you have your curly brackets. Then you do your color, you add your color. I can use red if I want, and then I can also add my background color. I can use any color I want. I can say I want it to be blue. Now let's see what this looks like. This is what it looks like. It doesn't look very good, okay, because I used color red and the background color blue. Color affects the text, while the background color affects the what? The size of the button, right? But that's not what we want. So I'm going to change my color to white, for example. Let's see how that looks. So I'm going to refresh. Whoa, okay, that looks a little better, right? What do you think? Yeah, I think it looks okay. So we're going to work with this. Now, whenever you make a change in your code here in HTML, in CSS, or even when we get to JavaScript, always make sure you save before you come to your web page to refresh. Or better still, to make your work easy, you come to File here and turn on auto save. That way you don't have to keep saving over and over. It will automatically save it. With that, we are done with the CSS of our project, and now it's time for us to add some life to this application. As you can see right now, if I type a number in the box and I click the button, it does nothing compared to this finished work, which what gives a response. Now let's add some JavaScript to bring our project to life. Subscribe and like the video as we go along.